Year one, 560,000.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
About how much profit roughly? Gross profit?
Profit margin gross was 76,000 that year.
Nice. Okay, cool. Then let's talk about year two.
Year two was just over 2 million.
Nice. So I'm going to introduce my guest. This is my guest, Cody Miller. Cody, welcome to the stage, my friend. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Dennis. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, awesome. Now, Cody, give us a quick intro, kind of where you're from, kind of how you got started in the freight brokerage business. Give us a 1 or 2 minute intro into that, and then we'll kind of peel the onion back and pull it apart and see where we can get.
Sounds good. Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in Utah. I'm settled down here in eastern Utah right now. It's the Uinta Basin. It's kind of up in the corner of Wyoming and Colorado. And oil field background, supervisor, running around in the field, swinging hammers, turning wrenches, all that good stuff, and orchestrating pipeline maintenance, new construction of facilities, and things of that nature for 10 years. It was really fun. Kind of got a little bit of a dive into the trucking on that category, just lining up, materials coming inbound, outbound, mobilization, demobilization. So started turning the pages and looking at opening up a brokerage. I found you through YouTube and Google search and figured, all right, this is my guy. I'm going to pick 1 or 2 mentors. You're number one. I'm going to see what you got to say, follow you, see if we can do this. So watched some of your videos, presented it to the company president, my partner, said, hey, we can do this thing. Let's make it happen. Launched it, got filed for authority in October 21, had our first loads moved in November. Really slow start. I joined on your sales accelerator following the Freight Broker Bootcamp and really enjoyed the collaborative meetings that we had there. I know you don't do one-on-one, and I really wanted it. But at that time, 30,000 was a heavy investment too, and you weren't offering it. So sales accelerator was a huge eye-opener for me. It was massive, man. We locked in our first large contract customer with the training that I gained from you there. And from there, it's pretty much history, right? Like that's what's given us our real fuel to the fire. Year one was interesting. It was really hard, but just to gain them initial customers and the momentum that we've built has been extremely exciting. I absolutely love what I do every day now. It beats the heck out of turning wrenches.
I love it. So we're going to pull that apart. So you started in the oil fields, right? Mm-hmm. Well, before we dive into this, right? Just so you guys know, I'm going to premise this, and I probably should have done this up front. In just a couple of short years, Cody and his team have built a $2 million plus freight brokerage from no experience as a broker and a little bit of experience in the trucking industry on the asset side, which I'm sure was very helpful. But my first question to you is, and we're gonna kind of talk about that startup a little bit, but what's one thing you learned in the oil fields, right? Because you did that business, you were in that business for 10 years, right? You were entrenched in it. You probably were an expert and knew more than 99% of the people walking down the street. What's one thing you learned in that industry that crossed over into freight brokerage that you think was a big benefit to you?
I think the biggest benefit there, biggest takeaway was really the demand of time. The oil field really did train me to be available 24 hours a day. Not necessarily was I the only one that was out there 24 hours, but when you got crews that are working on projects, 24 hours a day, you got to be ready for inbound calls, you have to be ready for anything to pop up, right? So that was my biggest takeaway that really prepared me for what we're doing now. That, and then obviously, watching the mobilization and demobilization of projects.
Yeah. So you had developed that muscle and that habit of being on demand and being ready at a moment's notice to handle issues and problems. And for some people, I think that's a little bit of a change of lifestyle when they first come into the business, right? If you're coming from a normal 8 to 4, 9 to 5 type lifestyle where you leave it at the door, coming from a W-2 position, that's not what it takes to run any successful business, and definitely not a freight brokerage. All right, cool. So you went from the oil fields, and then you guys started running some of your own trucks. Let's have that same sort of lesson from there. Running as an asset-based carrier. How many trucks did you guys have? 5, 10?
So we had 10.
You had 10 trucks. Mm-hmm. What's the biggest lesson you learned there that helped migrate you into the brokerage side? What's one of those things that just stands out to you?
Yeah, relationships. The battle of booking loads every day and dealing without direct customers, without going directly to the shipper. And we tried. It's just really hard to secure those relationships. And it's possible. Anybody out there running an asset-based trucking company, don't think for a second that you can't build direct relationships with shippers. It's just hard to do, right? But relationships were key. The brokers that we worked with to rebook, they were lifesavers in many different moments. And that was really the takeaway there. And the biggest valuation was those relationships that were dependable, that kept my trucks rolling, that kept my drivers loaded, and kept them in a paycheck, right?
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I always preach, and you were part of my sales accelerator. You were part of different programs, and you've been running a brokerage for a while now. I always preach relationships over transactions. The problem in the trucking and logistics and freight brokerage industry is that everybody is so damn transactional, right? It's what have you done for me lately? Where's your truck today? Where's your load today? Everything is so transactional that it ignores the glaringly obvious nuance of a relationship, right?
Right.
And when you become very transactional, obviously there's very little loyalty, there's very little retention or recurring business. And so, yeah, I mean, I've said it a million times, and you just said it best. Relationships over transactions, that's really one of the keys. So I'm glad you pointed that out. I mean, I think that goes for any business, but I tell you, having been involved in the freight brokerage industry the last 20 years, when I came into the industry, it kind of blew my mind because that wasn't the way it was in previous businesses. But, I guess that the good and bad of that, the good is that if you focus on relationships, you'll stand out from the crowd. If you don't, then you'll just be another, freight jockey, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, love it. Okay, cool. All right. So let's talk. When did you start your freight brokerage? What year?
So 2021, October is when we applied for our authority. Yeah, kickoff, very end of 21. So really 22 was our first year.
Yeah, you started moving freight about November. 1 year, what was approximately how much was the revenue? What year one?
So year one, 560,000.
Nice. About how much profit roughly? Gross profit?
Profit margin gross was 76,000 that year.
Nice. Okay, cool. Then let's talk about year two.
Year two was just over 2 million.
Nice. So 2 million, and then probably the same margin. What was it? Maybe like 13 to 15%, something like that.
Actually, year two we did pretty darn good, and 14 and a half.
Yeah, perfect. Awesome. I love it. Well, that's awesome. So tell me about what's your niche? I mean, I probably know this, and the audience might have already inferred this, but what's your niche? What do you focus in on as a freight broker?
Yeah, so I get excited about open deck, heavy haul. I really like RGN, low boys, that type of thing, tilt decks, and that obviously is from my background.
Yeah.
From the oil field background, that's what I was seeing come in and out of locations every day. That's the load securement that I was checking before the trucks departed. So that's where I'm at. That's what gets me excited. That's what I really like. That's my niche. I love it.
As the carrier side, did you have that type of equipment? Did you have that?
We did.
You did. Okay.
Yeah, that's what we first broke out with, was just sending our flatbed trucks over the road, and we had one RGN trailer. So that's where the heavy haul and oversized stuff started playing in.
So the customers, are you dealing with customers that are kind of like you were in the oil field business, or have you just kind of opened up to that type of equipment? Hey, if it can go on a flat deck, then, we might be your guy.
Yeah, majority is construction based,
okay.
Not just oil field, but just all construction based is really the niche that we're going after. So agriculture, new development, oil field.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about your first customer, right? You came from the oil field asset side where you didn't have any direct customers, and then you migrated into brokerage. Tell me about your first shipper. How did you get your first load? Give us a quick story about how you got that first shipper load and how you were able to move it.
Yeah, actually LinkedIn outreach. So you preached hard on the LinkedIn and other social media platforms, right? Them connections to make warm connections rather than just cold outreach.
Yep.
I've been hammering on cold connections since when we first applied for the authority. So before it was granted.
Yep.
Really trying to get a head start, and just speed dialing, cold calls, 100 calls a day really was getting me nowhere. A lot of conversations, really short ones, But LinkedIn was really the key differentiator there. I was able to establish and say, hey, look, I'm a real person, and make connections with people first, and then do outreach to follow up and see if they had any load opportunities.
So tell me, not specifically, you don't have to disclose who the customer was, but describe to me kind of the transaction. I mean, you sent a connection request and then you called, or did you email them, or give us a little bit of a sequence. I think this is where a lot of new brokers struggle, and even brokers that have been around for a while who haven't really been filling their funnel, and maybe they need to reinitiate some of that sales outreach. Tell me a little bit more how the cadence went, how the conversation started.
Definitely. So first things first was a connection request, personalized message, really just introducing myself and launching it out with, happy to connect, share insights and thoughts, be able to help you out any way that we can, really just share the knowledge, right? Then that warm connection, follow up with a phone call, and then a few emails, bounce back to LinkedIn for a message here and there. Make sure to like, comment, share on their material. and really support what
Perfect.
they're doing as a business, right? You want to see them succeed.
Yeah,
Big
of
part of building
course.
relationships is really cheering each other on and offering insight. So then it starts out with a question, hey, could we move this like this? Yeah, absolutely. And then make sure we can solve that up for them, give them a rate. The rest is pretty much history, just plugging and playing from there.
Yeah. So some of the key things that you guys can take from that. Number one, he didn't just reach out and beat him over the head with his pitch, right? He was a lot more subtle. He took a little bit slower path, right? He slowed things down. He wasn't quite as aggressive. And that's probably the most important lesson that I think you guys can take from using LinkedIn or using any sales outreach, right? Whether that be on the phone or face to face or LinkedIn or email, right? Don't get overly aggressive, but social selling in particular, you got to slow things down, right? He built a little bit of rapport. They were able to look at his LinkedIn profile that had been optimized, and they could see he had a lot of experience in the oil fields and the trucking industry. So that built a lot of credibility, and there was a little bit of back and forth. And then from there, what happened? They reached out to him and said, hey, how do we do this or this? Or, hey, are you able to do X, Y, and Z? And then he responds, and that starts the dialogue, right? And then it's a totally different type of conversation when they're asking you for information versus you always asking them, right? All right, so you got on the phone, you did the quote, and then tell us how the whole first movement went. I mean, did everything go according to Hoyle? Did you have to scramble? Did you make any money on the load? Did you lose money on the load? Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think we made like $20 on that first one. It
I
might have
love
been
it.
like 25,
Yeah.
So a little bit of a low quote, but got my foot in the door.
Yep.
Everything went smooth as far as on the shipper and receiver's perception, right? The
Yep.
view of it. I actually ended up having to fall off of the truck like an hour before pickup, and I had to slide another one in, which is why the profit margin dropped from starting out. I was like, okay, we're gonna have a minimum profit margin of $100 on every load, right? 150 at least, but minimum threshold 100. And I had it booked up for like a 175, and an hour before the pickup, the carrier fell through. So pivoted, recovered the load, got a driver to pick up. They're like 5 minutes late maybe, but they slid in basically right on the appointed time. And yeah, from there, I mean, the shipment went really good. Everything was solid. And because the shipper and the receiver didn't have to deal with that truck fall off and scrambling to recover, they were able to keep their guys on project and on time. And from there, we ended up launching a sustained relationship. We still do business with that customer today.
So you made a very small amount of money on that first shipment, but since then, that's been 2 years now, right? That's been about 2 years now, 2 years now since you've done that. So since then, starting with that first load, making very little money. I mean, how much profit do you think you've generated from that client just based on the recurring services? I mean, guess.
That's a good question. I haven't actually singled out that account for a while, but
Thousands,
I would say
5,000,
probably closer to
40,000.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what started out, and I want to zero in on this for a minute because this is really important, right? What started out as a very low profit transaction that was based on one load commitment. Okay. They didn't say, hey, we're going to guarantee you 10 loads a week and we're going to pay you all this money. And, we need you to do all this. We just need you to prove you can move this one load. And that one load that he struggled through with some of the issues that took place turned into, over the last couple of years, over $40,000 in profit. Okay. That's how this business works. All right. The hardest part of this whole business is getting that first load. And if you can make it look as easy as Cody made it look on the outside compared to what was actually going on behind the scenes, you get a second load and then you get a third load and then you get a 10th load. And then that's how you build a real relationship. So I love it. Perfect. All right, cool. So let's talk a little bit about kind of your first year, right? Because that was a big learning curve. Because I could see you went from 0 to $500,000, and then you went from $500,000 to $2 million. So there was a big jump, right? So you had that learning curve year one. And so what were some of those biggest lessons that you learned year one? Or maybe there were some mistakes that you made, those made you pivot and make some changes that allow you to grow so rapidly. I mean, what are some of those early lessons?
So developing those relationships, I didn't want to be the pushy, like used car salesman guy, right? And making the warm connections, landing me that first customer, the first load opportunity, and was really pivotal in that moment. That was the breakthrough of, okay, this is how this is going to work, right? Take my time, slow it down. But it was also because I didn't want to seem too pushy. I wasn't really asking for that additional volume. I was more just wanting to continue the friendly relationships and not asking for referrals. That's a big one. referrals and reviews. It was huge. Starting to ask for referrals and reviews really got me to open up additional doors and increase volumes. These were the connecting factors that helped us scale the business upward, was starting to ask and reach out for those referrals and for the reviews, which then in turn led to the questions of basically, I mean, how much more freight can you handle? So we were able to secure a lot more volume.
Okay, good. So asking for referrals was kind of that big lesson. I mean, that was really the key. I mean, how many customers did you actually get from that? Was that a key part of how you got new customers?
Yeah, and I would say very large success was owed to that. So my personal book consists of about 15 customers. It's really not overwhelmingly large. I do most of my business with a handful of them, right? Say 6 or 7. The biggest point was that in doing that, it just encouraged the added visibility for, hey, we are seeking more volume, and what we're doing here, we really like it. We like working with you, and we want you to give us a review because we enjoy our partnership and our relations. And then that encourages them to feel like, oh, okay, we're really valued here, and yeah, we have some more projects going on, and we can definitely get linked up. And then those recommendations and those referrals is the fastest way to business success, because you don't have to do that cold introduction of proving yourself. You have somebody that they already know and trust that says, hey, you need to get talking with Cody Miller because he can really help you out on what you guys are doing over there.
Yeah, no, I mean, if you can get referrals, that's like hot knife through butter, right? I mean, that's
absolutely
about as good as it gets when you get a warm referral like that. You mentioned something. Did you get testimonials? Have you spent time with the existing customers and had them do, like, whether it be a video or a written type of testimonial talking about how their experience has been with you? Have you leveraged that at all, or has it just mainly been referrals?
I have a little bit, and we need to do another cycle of that again, or rather a cycle. We need to make sure it's consistent and ongoing. So as the CEO and wearing all the hats of the industry or of the business, we have we have a team put together, right? We have 10 agents. I have an AP. We have a CFO. I have my assistant directly, and we have a company president. But essentially, as a CEO, wearing all the hats and entrepreneur requires a lot of shifting mindset, right? It's my mind's on marketing really strong, and then it's over accounting review, cash flow. It's a cycle. But what I'm really trying to niche down or buckle down into rather is doing that, the ongoing referrals requests and testimonials. So we've done that in the past, and I really have seen great success with that. And yeah, thanks for putting it back on my mind, because I do into requesting those again, actually.
Yeah, well, I understand. Obviously, as a new business, you're wearing all the hats, and eventually you're filling in the gaps of the team. You're doing some finance, you're doing some marketing, you're doing some recruiting, you're doing some sales, you're doing a little bit of everything. And that's the stage of every early entrepreneur, and you're kind of filling in the cracks. Eventually you'll get that marketing person, and you'll have other dedicated resources. But I think just stressing to everybody here and just kind of reinforcing what we're talking about now, should be a rule in every one of your companies, whether you're in a new broker or an existing broker, you've been a broker for 20 years. Every single customer that you do business with, you should always attempt to get a customer testimonial. Now, you may not be able to get it after the first load. Probably going to have to build some trust with them, build a little bit of rapport with them after you've been doing business with them for several weeks or maybe a couple of months, and things are going well. You got to ask them for a testimonial. Now, if it's a video testimonial, that's perfect. But if it's a written testimonial, just something in writing, whether that be something that came via email or they sent you on LinkedIn or whatever the case may be, you can leverage that testimonial almost as well as you can leverage a referral. Because there's an old saying, right? When you say it about yourself, it's bragging, but when someone else says it about you, it's proof, right? So yeah, I think that's an important lesson. And, it sounds like Cody's done a little bit of that, but he's going to do a lot more in the future. So
I'll definitely be increasing that. Thanks for putting it top of mind.
Yeah, what I used to like to do is whenever I would have, you're usually going to have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 conversations or communications with a prospect. Every time I would talk to them or have a communications, my goal was to drop one new testimonial. And after a while, they were getting a testimonial from ABC, and then they were getting a testimonial from XYZ, and then they were getting a testimonial from 1, 2, 3. And they just kept on getting these different testimonials. And it just made my job so much easier because they were selling for me, right? So I didn't have to be quite as aggressive. The customers were speaking for me. And that just became a really important part of the methodology for follow-up, right? And it just made, it always made those conversations so much nicer, right? Because we had something cool to talk about. All right, cool. So what's the future hold Cody, what's the plan here to go from 2 million to 10 million? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, scaling up and putting my agents in place. So this year is really the foundation and marker of us building the agent model route.
Yep.
So mid-year last year, we hired a handful of agents on. We've had 2 of them that are still with us. So a lot of them didn't end up fitting, or making it work. But this year, the focus is building that agent model out. We have 10 agents currently. We're in the hiring process, and we're really trying to just develop out the teams, like you said, right? I mean, we wear one hat for the start of it all. And as everything comes together, we'll be adding additional AP staff onto our team as well here in the coming months. So it's really scaling up and building the team out, and then the collaboration. So we're doing live team meetings every Tuesday. We get on, we do a live Zoom meet. We talk about what we're up against, the challenges, what we had that week prior, what we're up against that day. We help each other work through stalemates, if you will, to flip those customers or prospects to being active customers. And that's really going to be the game changer, I believe.
Yeah, I love the fact that you do weekly calls, live calls with your team, and you guys brainstorm on challenges or issues or problems that they're having. I love that. I think that's important. I don't think a lot of people do that. But the agent model is the model you're really looking to pursue to scale then, primarily agents.
Yes. Yep.
So what type of agents? I mean, obviously you'd love to recruit somebody who has a $5 million book,
Yeah.
and, to come on board, and that may very well happen. But the question is, do you hire new agents who maybe have gotten some training but don't have a book of business? Are you really kind of converting into, hey, we're looking for people who have a small book of business? I mean, what is it that you're looking for? Because this audience is probably full of both.
So last year when we did an initial hiring, mid-year, it was getting closer to Q4, but Q3 we did our initial hiring. And during that round, I was really wanting to, in the oil field, we got straight green hats and we trained them up and we taught them how to go. And that was a huge success for us because we taught them and implemented us with most businesses too, right? You implement the way that your standard operating procedures are. They understand what the requirements are at your company and how things should be handled. And they're not playing that background noise of, well, when I was here, we did this. And so,
right. This is how we've always done it over here. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't have this is how we always done it factor playing into it. We tried that last year with the brokerage agents that we hired on. And like I said, there was just not a big success rate. So pulling on, drivers and things of that nature that have just basically got fresh wind of being a broker, and that didn't really span out. This year, we're really focusing on those agents that are currently in the role, have at least 2 years of experience, primarily 4 or more, and essentially, have a book of business in place or have clients in the industry or, connections in the industry that they could turn and merge into clients at least. So, a $30,000 book a month is optimum for gross profit, but it's not an absolute requirement. It's not a yes or a no factor, I guess, on whether we'll give them an opportunity.
Yeah. When you're talking about the comparison between the oil field and hiring people green there and training them up versus hiring an agent who's green and training them up, the biggest variable there is the agents are on straight commission, right?
Right.
Whereas your oil field people, I'm assuming, we're getting some sort of salary or hourly rate, right?
Correct.
And so, so the problem with the agents is, they will run out of runway before they get their customers. The bills will add up faster than their commissions, and then they have to make a decision and go get a job. So
yes,
as you hire a brand new agent into the industry, it's challenging. But I'll believe it or not, 2 or 3 out of 10 if they were true newbies, probably isn't a bad conversion rate. The challenge is how many experienced agents with a book of business are available to recruit versus how many inexperienced agents that are looking for an opportunity are there available to recruit. So I get it. Obviously it's kind of a conundrum, right? You've got pros and cons of both sides. But I think, obviously, so your most successful agent now, tell us a little bit about, you don't need to tell us the name or anything, but what are they doing in gross profit? Roughly.
They're averaging about 12% margin, and profit, I would say, is probably an equivalent of maybe 10% of what we do overall. But they're really picking up a lot of momentum this year specifically. Last year was more of that ground break threshold, I guess, getting through from working with just one customer and really expanding out. So this year they're expanding their book out. They put a couple of sub agents on underneath them, and now they have freight finders working in that direction. So that's been extremely successful to them to get additional volumes and continue to make new relationships, because, you know, if you're just focused on one customer or even a couple, then you're not really getting that additional. So the startup of the outbound and the outreach initially was really strong, and then they got that comfortable seat with dealing with a few customers, you know, the one or two that were doing repeat loads consistently, and really just were sticking to that until the start of this year. And now they've really ramped up to gain additional and continue to build their book out, which has been very successful for them.
Got it. Last question. So you chose the agent model, and that's the model you're going to pursue. Mm-hmm. And besides the turnover of new agents, you know, kind of the newbies and, you know, that training model of bringing newbies on and trying to ramp them up. Other than that lesson of high turnover and kind of pivoting to experienced agents, what's one of the biggest things that you learned about the agent model that you probably didn't know coming in and deciding you were going to launch that model?
It's a good question. You know, I felt like a lot of the kind of battle there, you know, the trench ground, has been perceived earlier, right? So I've seen it coming, but including the rollover or the turnover rate as well. And I think the biggest part there that wasn't foreseen was really the acquisition of agents. So how to make Middle Hawk sexy and have people want to join in, right?
Yep.
My mind was so focused on presenting ourselves to potential customers, to prospects, that I wasn't focused on really presenting ourselves to others in the industry that are interested in joining our team, right? A big part of that is obviously shifting the focus to make your organization sexy and obtainable without ping pong tables and foosball and beer in the garden, I guess.
Right. No, that's a good point. So you had packaged up your business to sell it to shippers so that you gave a good first impression and that you could service them the way they were looking and needed to be serviced, but you hadn't packaged the business up in a retail package for new agents to come on, right? Whether that be new and experienced agents or newer inexperienced agents or experienced agents. You just hadn't packaged it up. And that's what you guys have to understand is that, and what I love about what Cody did here is that he didn't go out day one and just start recruiting agents, right? He built his own book of business. He learned how to do the business. He had developed relationships and cash flow that he could reinvest into the business. And then he decided he was going to take the agent model. And what I like about that is he already built a business, right? So, and that business is now something you can package up and customize to agents, because agents are looking for different things than shippers are, right? They're looking for, hey, what's my commission rate? How often do I get paid? What type of insurance do you have? What's your credit like? Do you have a good website? Do you do trainings? How do you support the agents? What's the cost of load boards? All those sorts of things are the questions that agents are going to have. And that's very different. So I love that. I think that's what I would kind of had expected you to say and was hoping you would say, but wasn't sure, your perspective on it, because everybody has a little bit different journey. So,
absolutely.
Hey, listen, Cody, before we leave here, before we end this, let everybody know how they can connect with you. But before we do that, any final words of encouragement or lessons or anything you want to share before we wrap up today?
Yeah, absolutely. So anything is possible, right? Just believe in yourself, keep going. And I'm going to kind of coin this little entry here, but whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. So really put your mind to it and be willing to pivot. When we first started out, my whole goal was to develop all house accounts, and I wasn't going to build the agent model. I wanted to do like nearshore staffing, and just be willing to pivot, really niche down. Dennis, Mr. Brown here is 100% solid on that. The key to success is niching down for that initial growth, and don't be afraid to get out there.
Yeah, I love it. Hey, listen, let everybody know, let every prospective agent know that might be interested in your business, or carriers that might want to work with you. Let them know how they could connect with you, maybe your website, your email, or whatever you want to share, and then we'll wrap it up for today.
Absolutely. So Middle Hawk Transportation, www.middlehawktransportation.com. Look us up, get us on there. You can do submissions for hiring there with our agents. You can do onboarding requests through that website as well. Look me up on LinkedIn, Cody Miller on LinkedIn. I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube. I'm going to be more active on those platforms as time goes on, but feel free to reach out to me and connect on social media platforms. You can find me. I'm either C Miller or Cody Miller.
Perfect. Cody, listen. Appreciate you being here, my friend. Thank you so much. Congrats on all your success. It sounds like you're going to have a bang up year this year because sales are continuing to grow based on our earlier conversations. Maybe we'll do a follow-up here in another year or two and see how things are growing and how close you are to hitting that 10 million mark.
Yeah, I love it, Dennis. Thank you. Appreciate you having me. Thanks everybody for joining.
If you're curious about becoming a freight broker or a freight agent, and you're struggling to put it all together, A to Z, you're getting some misinformation from TikTok and you're getting some information from YouTube and from Google, and you want help, someone who's helped people build 6 and 7 figure freight brokerages, check out my startup program, freightbrokerbootcamp.com. Trained over 10,000 students. I've had that program since 2009. I've personally done over $200 million as a freight broker, and we offer a 60-day, 100% unconditional money-back guarantee for any reason. So you can check that out at freightbrokerbootcamp.com.